She stepped out of the cold evening air into the warmth of the restaurant, feeling an instant relief as the door closed behind her. The soft hum of conversation, the gentle clatter of cutlery, and the low flickering of lights made the room feel alive yet comfortable. The scent of fresh bread, roasting meat, and sweet desserts mingled in the air, drawing her further inside. She had been walking for hours, her stomach growling in protest at the long day she had endured. Every step she took had felt heavier than the last, and the thought of a warm meal made her heart lift slightly. She took a moment to pause near the entrance, letting her eyes adjust to the dimmed lighting. The restaurant was busier than she expected for a weekday evening. Couples whispered to each other across tables, friends laughed loudly over shared stories, and a family in the corner tried to calm an energetic child whose small feet barely touched the ground. The atmosphere was lively, but not overwhelming, a delicate balance that made the room feel inviting. She scanned the tables, trying to find a place to sit, her hunger pushing her to hurry, but her curiosity slowing her down. Then she saw it. In the corner of the room, a grand piano. It was polished to a high shine, reflecting the soft light above it. A pianist sat at the keys, fingers moving gracefully over them, filling the restaurant with a melody that felt both gentle and commanding. The music drew her attention instantly. She didn't know why, but it seemed to pull her toward it like a magnet. She felt a strange calm wash over her, even as her stomach reminded her of its emptiness. There was something in the way the pianist played, the care in each note, the subtle rise and fall of the melody, that made her stop in her tracks. Hesitating only for a moment, she chose a seat near the piano. It wasn't the closest table, but it was close enough to feel the music as more than just background sound. She placed her bag on the chair beside her and sank into her seat, letting out a small sigh of relief. Finally, she could rest. Finally, she could eat. But something in the music made her pause. She set her menu down, not out of forgetfulness, but because she didn't want to break the spell that seemed to hang in the air. The pianist didn't just play. He spoke through the keys. Each note carried emotion, telling stories without words. She found herself leaning slightly forward, her elbows on the table, her hands clasped loosely, her eyes following every movement of his hands. She could see the tension in his fingers when the music became complex and the relaxation when a soft, flowing section came through. She realized that she had never truly watched someone play before, not like this. There was dedication, precision, and yet something raw and human in every touch. Around her, diners seemed mostly unaware of the magic happening in the corner, but she could feel it. Even when the waiter passed by, carrying plates and glasses, or when the child squealed in excitement over a dessert. The music wrapped around her, keeping her anchored. Her hunger, though still present, began to fade into the background. She found herself tapping her foot lightly, not out of impatience, but because her body instinctively wanted to move with the rhythm. She looked at the pianist, noticing small details she hadn't expected. The way he would close his eyes briefly, as if seeing the music in his mind rather than on the keys. The way his shoulders relaxed and then tensed, almost like he was dancing with the melody. She wondered how long it took to master such skill. How much practice, how much patience. The thought made her feel a little nervous, a little envious, because she had once tried playing piano as a child, but had given up too soon. She swallowed hard, feeling a sudden pang of regret, but quickly replaced it with admiration. Right now, she just wanted to be in the moment, to watch, to listen, to breathe in the harmony. The waitress came over to her table with a cheerful smile. She introduced herself and asked if she was ready to order. The girl looked down at the menu, but her mind wandered. The words on the page blurred as she glanced up at the pianist again. She knew she needed to eat. She knew her stomach demanded it. But the music had taken over her attention in a way she hadn't expected. Finally, she chose something simple, a meal that promised warmth and satisfaction. The waitress nodded, scribbling the order, and moved on with a polite, understanding smile. Sensing perhaps that her customer was more absorbed in the piano than the food as she waited, she studied the room, noticing things she hadn't before. The subtle design of the restaurant, the artwork on the walls, the the soft lighting that created shadows and highlights in different corners. All of it felt deliberate, like the place had been created not just for eating, but for experiencing. She could see other patrons glancing at the piano occasionally, a smile tugging at their lips, some nodding their heads subtly to the rhythm. It was as if the music had a way of speaking directly to anyone who cared to listen. The pianist shifted slightly. Changing the tempo of the piece, a new section began, slower, more reflective, almost as if he was telling a story. She felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something familiar about this part, though she couldn't place it immediately. Memories flickered in her mind, a childhood living room, a small piano, her fingers awkwardly pressing keys, the notes never quite right. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music take her back in time. It was comforting and bittersweet all at once. She hadn't realized she missed this feeling, the way music could touch something deep inside her. When she opened her eyes, she noticed the pianist looking up briefly, as if he had felt her presence, even though they had never met. There was a small, polite smile, and then he returned to the keys. The connection, however fleeting, made her heart skip a beat. She realized how unusual it was to feel such a strong emotion towards someone she didn't know. In a place she had just entered, over something as intangible as music. She wondered if he ever noticed how he affected people, or if he simply played because it was what he loved. Her food arrived, steaming and fragrant. She glanced at it, and her stomach gave a little grumble of approval. She picked up her fork, but paused again, listening for a moment more. The pianist had begun another piece, livelier this time, with faster notes and playful movements. The music made her want to smile, made her want to laugh quietly, made her forget that she had been hungry minutes ago. She took a small bite, tasting the food, feeling the warmth spread through her. It was good, comforting, but somehow secondary to the music that filled the space around her. She noticed small details about the pianist that she hadn't at first. The way his fingers seemed to float above the keys, barely touching them yet producing such clear, strong sound. The slight nod of his head, almost imperceptible, to keep the rhythm in check. The careful, measured breathing, in and out, keeping pace with the piece. It was more than skill. It was artistry, something she hadn't fully appreciated until now. As she ate, she found herself thinking about her own life. How often she had rushed through moments without noticing the beauty around her. How easily she had dismissed experiences that could have mattered. The music made her reflect, made her feel both regret and gratitude at the same time. She realized that sometimes the most meaningful experiences could happen in the simplest ways. Like a song played in a corner of a busy restaurant, time seemed to slow. She didn't check her phone, didn't glance at the clock, didn't notice how long she had been sitting. She was fully present, absorbed in the sounds, the lights, the smells, and the warmth of the restaurant. Each note the pianist played seemed to tell her something she couldn't put into words, something personal and universal at the same time. It was a strange, wonderful feeling, like being seen without being noticed. Like being understood without speaking. The people around her continued their conversations, laughed, clinked glasses, shared bites of dessert. But she felt slightly apart from them, connected instead to the music. She imagined herself at the piano, trying to reproduce the sound she heard, remembering the awkward lessons of her childhood. She felt a longing she couldn't name, a desire to create and to be present in that same way. And for a moment, she almost forgot she had come in hungry. Almost forgot everything except the gentle rise and fall of the melody. The way it seemed to speak directly to her. She took another bite of her meal, savoring it this time, but even as she chewed, her eyes remained on the pianist. He began a slower, more reflective piece, one that seemed to echo her thoughts and feelings. She felt tears prick the corners of her eyes, unbidden, and quickly blinked them away, not wanting to draw attention. The music had touched something she hadn't realized was still inside her, a memory, a feeling. A piece of herself she had neglected for too long. As the song continued, she leaned back slightly, letting the music wash over her. She realized she had been hungry not just for food, but for something deeper. The warmth of the restaurant, the presence of the pianist, the melody filling the roomette was nourishment of a different kind. She felt lighter, calmer, more aware, more alive in a way she hadn't been that day, and she knew, even without thinking too hard, that this evening would stay with her. A memory shaped by sound, feeling, and quiet revelation. She finished her meal slowly, almost reluctantly, because leaving the table would mean leaving the music behind. She paid attention to each bite, each sip of water, each small movement around her, trying to absorb the entire experience. When she finally set her fork down, she felt a mixture of satisfaction and longing. She wanted to stay, wanted to hear more, wanted to somehow carry this moment with her beyond the restaurant walls. The pianist played on, seemingly unaware of the effect he had on the girl, yet fully aware of the music in his hands. She watched, memorizing each gesture, each note, feeling a strange sense of gratitude and awe. She understood now why people said music could heal, could inspire, could change a person in a single moment. It was happening to her, quietly, profoundly. As she sat there with her UAs, the girl continued to sit near the piano. She realized she was no longer thinking about anything else. The restaurant, with its warmth and smells and voices, had become a backdrop to the music that filled the space. Every note seemed to reach her directly, not just through her ears, but deep inside her chest. She watched the pianist carefully, noticing how each movement of his hands seemed perfectly timed, yet somehow effortless. The music flowed, sometimes fast and lively, sometimes soft and tender, and she found herself following it closely, almost like she could see the story unfolding in the air around him. She had never felt music in this way before. It wasn't just something to enjoy in the background. It was a conversation, a connection, a bridge to emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Memories surfaced without warning. She remembered her first music lesson as a child, the clumsy pressing of the keys, the frustration of notes that never sounded right. She remembered sitting alone in her room, trying to mimic songs she heard on the radio, feeling a mixture of hope and failure. The memory brought a soft smile to her lips and a pang of longing to try again, to reconnect with the part of herself she had let slip away. Around her, diners were engaged in their own worlds. Some were chatting softly, others laughed a little louder, and yet the music seemed to touch everyone differently. She noticed a man in a corner tapping his finger on the table, keeping time without realizing it. A couple in another section glanced at the pianist and exchanged a knowing smile. The energy in the room shifted subtly, like the music was breathing life into the space. She felt a part of this moment, even though she had only just walked in. It was strange, almost magical, how something as simple as music could make a person feel so connected. The girl's mind wandered two thoughts, of her own ambitions and dreams. She had always wanted to do more, to explore more, but life had a way of pulling her away from her passions. Responsibilities, fear, doubt, all of it had crowded out the simple joys she once cherished. Now, sitting there, she felt a tiny spark reigniting. Watching the pianist, seeing someone so devoted and expressive with his art, reminded her that dedication could be beautiful, transformative, and worth pursuing. It was a feeling she hadn't realized she needed. A reminder that it wasn't too late to chase after what she loved. She noticed the subtle interactions the pianist had with the people around him. Occasionally, he would glance up and offer a small, encouraging nod to a diner, or smile faintly at a child, clapping their hands to the rhythm. He wasn't just performing. He was sharing, connecting, communicating through the music in ways words could not. The girl felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of being part of something larger than herself. Something that didn't require explanation or understanding, only feeling, as she ate slowly. Savoring each bite now that her hunger had softened, she began to let herself be carried by the music fully. Her thoughts drifted, imagining stories behind each note. Perhaps the lively piece was a tale of a bustling market, or a playful chase through a park. The softer, slower pieces seemed to whisper secrets, stories of love, loss, hope, and quiet triumphs. She felt like she was part of a narrative that had no words, no script, just pure emotion transmitted through the piano keys. The pianist shifted to a new melody, one that seemed almost hauntingly familiar. She paused mid-bite, her attention fully captured. There was something about the rhythm, the pattern of the chords, that stirred a memory she couldn't immediately place. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over her, feeling the vibration in her chest. Slowly, she remembered it was a song she had attempted to learn as a child, one she had struggled with endlessly. Hearing it played so beautifully now, by someone else, was both exhilarating and deeply moving. A strange feeling of connection took hold of her. She felt as though the pianist understood something about her life, about her struggles and aspirations, without ever having met her. Each note felt personal, resonating with experiences she hadn't shared with anyone. She realized that music had a unique power to touch people in ways nothing else could. It could remind someone of who they were, who they wanted to be, and what they had almost forgotten along the way. And she felt grateful, not only for the music, but for the moment. For the quiet magic that had pulled her into it. She glanced around and saw other diners beginning to notice the shift in energy as well. The chatter had softened, people leaning slightly closer to their companions or tilting their heads toward the music. Even those who didn't consciously focus on the pianist seemed to feel the effect, a subtle hush falling over parts of the room. The girl felt herself smiling, feeling a connection not only to the pianist, but to everyone present, as if they were all part of the same invisible thread woven by sound and feeling. Time became less important. She had no sense of how long she had been sitting, eating, and listening. Minutes blurred into an indistinguishable flow, yet she didn't mind. There was a strange peace in not knowing, in simply being present, allowing herself to absorb every detail of the warmth of the restaurant, the soft lighting, the occasional clinking of glasses, and most of all, the music that carried her heart along with it. The pianist began a new piece. One that was slower, more reflective, almost like a conversation with himself. She watched his eyes close briefly, as if seeing the music inside him rather than on the keys. The notes were deliberate, precise, yet filled with emotion, almost like he was sharing a piece of his soul without words. She felt a lump form in her throat, touched by the vulnerability and beauty of the moment. It was as though the music understood her better than she understood herself, responding to unspoken feelings and memories she hadn't realized were still alive. Her thoughts drifted to the dreams she had abandoned, the times she had allowed fear to stop her from pursuing what she loved. Seeing the pianist so immersed, so unafraid to express himself fully, made her reflect deeply on her own choices. She felt a mixture of regret and admiration, but also a growing determination. Perhaps it wasn't too late to reconnect with her passion, to allow herself to feel fully again. Just as she was doing now, she noticed small details she hadn't seen before. The way the pianist's fingers barely touched the keys, yet produced a sound that was so full and rich. The slight tilt of his head, the subtle rise and fall of his shoulders, the careful rhythm of his breath. Every gesture was part of the story, part of the performance, part of the invisible conversation happening between him and the room. She realized that this was more than music. It was art, connection, and emotion, all intertwined. The girl felt her own pulse quicken with excitement, with inspiration. She remembered how much she had loved music as a child, how it had once brought her joy, comfort, and hope. Now, sitting here, she felt that spark returning, slowly but surely. It was a quiet awakening, a gentle reminder that the things she loved could still matter, could still touch her life, even if she had set them aside for years. Around her, the restaurant continued to buzz with life, but she felt a bubble of calm and focus surrounding her. The music created a space where nothing else seemed to intrude. Every bite she took of her meal was now accompanied by thought, reflection, and a sense of presence she had long forgotten. She realized that nourishment came in many forms, and tonight, she was experiencing it not only through food but through sound, emotion, and connection. The pianist changed the mood again, moving into a livelier section, and she felt her spirits lift. Her foot tapped in time with the rhythm, her body responding instinctively to the melody. She noticed other diners reacting similarly, small movements and smiles betraying the subtle influence of the music. It was remarkable how a single performance could ripple through a room, touching people in unique and unexpected ways. She felt grateful to witness it, grateful to feel part of something larger than herself. Even if only for a fleeting moment, She found herself imagining stories behind the music, creating narratives in her mind to match the notes. Perhaps the playful melodies represented adventures, or the slower passages told of longing and hope. The music became a mirror for her own imagination, allowing her to explore feelings and thoughts she had ignored or forgotten. It was liberating, a gentle escape and yet grounding at the same time. She felt fully alive, fully present, and fully herself. As the piece continued, she felt tears welling in her eyes, not from sadness, but from a deep sense of being moved. She quickly blinked them away, smiling softly to herself. It was strange to feel such intensity in a public place, yet she didn't feel embarrassed or self-conscious. The music had created a safe space, a world within a world, where she could feel without restraint. She realized that this was a rare and precious experience, one that would stay with her long after the restaurant lights dimmed. She took a deep breath, allowing the music to fill her lungs as well as her ears, and felt a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. She was aware of her surroundings, of the people around her, yet she felt a deep personal connection to something beyond the immediate. The pianist was telling a story, sharing a piece of himself, and in turn, she was rediscovering a part of herself she had thought lost. It was a delicate, powerful exchange, and she cherished every moment. Minutes passed like hours, and yet she didn't mind. She was content to sit, to listen, to reflect. Each new note brought a wave of emotions, memories, and thoughts, intertwining in ways that were both surprising and familiar. She realized that this was what it meant to be truly present, to engage fully with life, with art, and with oneself. She felt a quiet determination growing inside her, a promise to herself that she would carry this feeling forward, that she would not let it fade. The pianist played on, seemingly oblivious to the effect he had on the girl, yet fully immersed in his craft. She watched him closely, noticing the small shifts in his expression. The subtle she had been sitting near the piano for what felt like an eternity, completely absorbed in the music. Each new song seemed to touch her in ways she could not explain. Her hunger had almost completely faded, replaced by an emotional fullness that made her heart pound and her mind race. She felt alive, yet strangely calm, as if the music had opened a door to a part of herself she had long forgotten. Her hands rested on the table, fingers tapping lightly in rhythm without conscious thought. She was no longer just listening. She was experiencing, living each note, each chord, each pause, as if it were meant solely for her. Then the pianist began a piece that made her catch her breath. She recognized it instantly, even though she had not heard it in years. It was a song she had tried to learn as a child, one that had frustrated her endlessly because she could never get the timing right. Her fingers had always stumbled over the keys, leaving her feeling inadequate and disappointed. Hearing it now, played perfectly, filled her with a mixture of awe, nostalgia, and a strange, painful regret. The song carried with it every memory she had of her own attempts, every small failure, and yet now it felt triumphant, beautiful, and complete. She could hardly believe her ears. The notes were exactly as they should be, flowing effortlessly from the pianist's fingers. It was as though he knew her story, her struggles, and had chosen this piece to speak directly to her. She felt an overwhelming connection, a bridge between her past and the present, and she could not stop herself from leaning forward, utterly captivated. Her heart raced, and her stomach, which had been her only concern when she walked in, now seemed distant and insignificant. Memories flooded back in vivid detail. She saw herself at the piano at home as a child, struggling with the same song, her small fingers unable to hit the right keys, her parents watching with patient encouragement, her frustration boiling over into tears. She remembered the nights she spent practicing alone, hoping to improve, but never quite reaching the level she wanted. That struggle, once a source of embarrassment, now felt like a part of her story that had shaped her. She realized that her effort had not been wasted. It had brought her here, to this moment, fully alive and deeply moved by something she had once loved. The restaurant around her seemed to fade into the background. Conversations, laughter, and clinking glasses continued, but they were distant. Irrelevant to the connection she felt with the music, Every note the pianist played seemed to resonate with her, speaking words that she could not articulate. She felt tears prick at her eyes, and she quickly blinked them away, not wanting to draw attention, but unable to stop the flood of emotions. She had not expected to feel this way. Not here, not tonight. Not over a song she had long thought of as a failure. Her mind began to race with thoughts. Why had the pianist chosen this song? Was it chance? Or had he somehow felt the story behind her struggle? The idea seemed absurd, yet she could not deny the intensity of her reaction. Every chord seemed to acknowledge her effort, her dedication, her past, and her dreams. She felt both seen and understood in a way that words could never achieve. It was as if the music had reached inside her and touched the part of her that had been silent for years. She watched the pianist closely, noting how focused and intentional every movement was. His fingers danced over the keys with precision, yet there was an emotional depth in each note that could not be taught. He closed his eyes briefly, as if visualizing the story behind the music, then returned to the keys, fully immersed. She wondered how long it had taken him to master this skill, to play with such ease and feeling. The thought filled her with admiration and a quiet envy, but mostly with inspiration. If he could pour his heart into something so fully, then perhaps she could find a way to reconnect with her own passion. The piece continued, and she felt a strange mixture of emotions: joy, sadness, nostalgia, and hope all swirling together. She felt like she was reliving her childhood, confronting her failures, and simultaneously experiencing the beauty of achievement she had never attained on her own. It was a strange, emotional paradox, leaving her both overwhelmed and exhilarated. She could not remember the last time she had felt such intensity from a single moment, a single experience. The music had transformed the space around her, and more importantly, it had transformed her. Her attention was so completely absorbed that she barely noticed when the waitress returned to check on her. She smiled politely and shook her head when asked if she needed anything, her focus entirely on the pianist. She realized that she had been there for hours, but time had lost its meaning. Every minute was filled with sound, emotion, and reflection, and she had no desire to break the spell. The food on her plate, though initially the reason she had come in, had become secondary to the experience unfolding before her. She leaned back slightly, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over her completely. She could feel the vibration of each note in her chest, as if the piano itself were speaking directly to her heart. Her mind wandered to all the paths she had not taken, the dreams she had put aside, the chances she had missed. Yet for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of possibility. A quiet hope that it was not too late to reconnect with the things she loved, to pursue the passions she had once abandoned. The music seemed to affirm this, encouraging her in a way words never could. She noticed subtle changes in the pianist's style. As he moved through the piece, some notes were soft, almost hesitant, while others were bold and confident. It mirrored the complexity of her own emotions, her doubts, her regrets, her fleeting moments of joy. She realized that music, like life, was not linear or perfect, but filled with variations, surprises, and nuances. The imperfections were part of its beauty, part of the story, just as her own life, with its twists and turns, held value and meaning. The restaurant around her seemed to hum with a gentle energy, a subtle response to the pianist's performance. Diners glanced toward the music, some smiling softly, some tapping their fingers, all unconsciously drawn into the atmosphere. She felt a sense of belonging, not just to the music, but to the room itself, to the shared experience of being present, fully aware, and moved by something greater than themselves. It was a rare and precious feeling, one she cherished quietly, knowing it might not come again. As the piece drew to a close, the pianist's final notes lingered in the air, fading slowly like a whisper. She sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of the experience, letting it sink into her mind and heart. She felt a mixture of awe, gratitude, and disbelief at the intensity of her reaction. It was more than she had expected, more than she could have imagined when she walked in hungry for a simple meal. The music had given her something she could not name, something profoundly personal and transformative, Her thoughts returned to the pianist. She wondered about the man behind the music, about his journey, his dedication, and his own stories. How long had he practiced to reach this level of mastery? What inspired him to play this particular piece tonight? She felt a desire to know him, to share her gratitude. Yet she also sensed that the experience was sacred in its own way, meant to be felt rather than explained. She decided to respect the moment, to let the music speak for itself, even if it left her with questions unanswered. The girl took a deep breath, letting the emotions settle, though they remained vibrant within her. She realized that the evening had shifted something inside her, opening a door she hadn't realized was closed. Her hunger, her fatigue, her everyday worries had all faded, replaced by a sense of purpose and reflection. She felt lighter, more aware, more alive. The music had reminded her of who she was, who she wanted to be, and what she had once loved. It was a gift she would carry with her long after the restaurant lights dimmed and the pianist had left. She glanced around the room again, noticing how the ordinary and the extraordinary coexisted. The clinking of glasses, the laughter, the conversations, all of it was part of the world she lived in. It layered with this unexpected moment of connection and beauty. She realized that life could surprise her in the smallest ways, that magic could appear in ordinary places if one was open to it. And she felt grateful, deeply grateful, for the chance to witness something so simple, yet so profound as she sat quietly. Savoring the afterglow of the music, she felt a growing determination within her. She wanted to reclaim the joy she had once felt, to pursue her passions without fear, to allow herself to be moved fully by the world around her. The pianist's performance had shown her that dedication, patience, and openness could create something beautiful, something that resonated far beyond the immediate moment. It was an inspiration she would not forget. Time began to regain its shape, and she realized that the restaurant would not stay open forever. The pianist would eventually pack up and leave. The music would fade, and the magic of the moment would become a memory. Yet she felt a quiet confidence that the impact of the evening would linger, guiding her choices, her passions, and her appreciation for life. She had been reminded of what it meant to feel fully, to live fully, to connect with beauty and emotion in unexpected places. She finished the last bite of her meal with a sense of completion, not just of physical hunger, but of emotional satisfaction. She leaned back, allowing herself one last moment of reflection before preparing to stand. Her mind replayed the music, the intricate movements of the pianist's hands, the emotions stirred within her. She knew that this experience would shape her for days, weeks, and perhaps even years. A touchstone of inspiration and awareness, the pianist moved on to the next piece. But she no longer felt the urgency to watch every movement. Instead, she sat in quiet contentment, absorbing what she could, letting the final notes linger in her heart. She realized that her evening had transformed from a simple desire for food into an unexpected journey through memory. Imach had been sitting near the piano for what felt like an eternity, yet she had no desire to leave. Each song carried her through a different emotion, a different memory, a different part of herself that she had neglected for too long. She felt completely absorbed, almost as if the world outside the restaurant no longer existed. The music wrapped around her like a gentle embrace, and she allowed herself to feel everything it brought: joy, nostalgia, longing, hope, and quiet inspiration. As the pianist concluded a particularly moving piece, he leaned back slightly, stretching his fingers, and offered a small, polite smile toward the audience. The girl felt an impulse rise within her and need to speak, to express her gratitude, to share the impact this performance had on her. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if it was appropriate, but something stronger than curiosity pushed her forward. She wanted to connect, even briefly, with the person who had stirred her soul so profoundly. She stood, smoothing her clothes nervously, and approached the piano. Her heart beat faster with each step. She could feel the warmth of the restaurant around her, the soft hum of conversation, but her focus was entirely on the pianist. He looked up as she neared, his eyes calm and inviting, as if he had expected her approach all along. She felt an immediate sense of ease, though her hands were clammy and her voice might shake when she spoke. "Excuse me," she began softly, unsure if her words would do justice to the emotions inside her. "I just wanted to thank you. Your music, it's incredible. It touched me in a way I didn't expect." The pianist nodded gently, a hint of a smile on his lips. "Thank you. I'm glad it spoke to you. Music has a way of connecting us, even when words fail." She hesitated, then found herself sharing a small piece of her story. The way the song he had just played reminded her of her own childhood struggles with piano. She spoke quietly, not wanting to disturb the other diners, but her words were earnest and heartfelt. The pianist listened attentively, his eyes never leaving hers, as if he could feel the truth in her voice. "It's a beautiful piece," he said finally, "and it's powerful because it resonates with someone who knows it from experience. You've carried it with you, even if you didn't play it perfectly, and that makes all the difference." She felt a wave of emotion wash over her, tears threatening to spill again, but this time it was not just from nostalgia, it was from understanding, acceptance, and a sense of being seen. For years, she had carried the frustration and disappointment of her past attempts at piano, believing that failure defined her. Now, she realized that her experiences, her effort, and her passion mattered, and that they had shaped who she was in ways she could finally appreciate. They spoke quietly for a few minutes, exchanging thoughts about music, dedication, and the subtle ways it could touch lives. The pianist shared stories of his own journey, challenges, long hours of practice, moments of doubt, and the joy that came from sharing music with others. She felt a connection beyond words, a mutual understanding rooted in shared experience and genuine passion. In that moment, the restaurant and all its bustle seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the quiet resonance of the music that had started it all. She asked about his choice of songs for the evening, curious why he had played the piece that had affected her so deeply. He explained that he often chose music that spoke to universal emotions, pieces that could evoke memories, dreams, and reflections for those willing to listen. He had no idea who she was, yet the song had found her, as if by coincidence or fate. She marveled at the strange, wonderful timing of it all, feeling a sense of wonder she had not experienced in years. The conversation gave her a newfound perspective. She realized that moments of beauty and connection could appear unexpectedly, that life had a way of surprising her when she least expected it. She thought about how easy it was to get caught up in routine, in responsibilities, in daily concerns, and how rare it was to allow herself to be fully present. Tonight had reminded her that it was worth it to pause, to feel, to notice, and to embrace experiences without expectation or judgment. As they spoke, she noticed the other diners occasionally glancing at them, curious about the exchange, but they seemed respectful and understanding. There was a sense of shared appreciation in the room, an acknowledgement of the subtle magic that had unfolded. She felt grateful not only for the music and the conversation, but also for the environment that had allowed such a moment to exist. It was a reminder that beauty could thrive in ordinary places. Waiting for someone to recognize it, she spoke about her own passion for music, about the pieces she had once tried to learn, the small triumphs and failures that had shaped her relationship with the piano. The pianist listened attentively, nodding and understanding, occasionally offering insights that made her reflect more deeply. She felt a sense of encouragement, as if her past experiences, both successful and frustrating, were being validated. The conversation gave her a clarity she hadn't anticipated, a renewed motivation to revisit the music she had once loved. They discussed the emotions that music could evoke, the subtle ways it could influence mood, memory, and perspective. The pianist explained that every performance was a conversation, not just with the audience, but with oneself. He spoke about the importance of presence, intention, and sincerity, and how these qualities transformed mere notes into something alive and meaningful. She absorbed his words, feeling them resonate deeply, as if they were guiding her toward a new understanding of her own life and creative expression. For a long while, they remained there, speaking quietly and thoughtfully. She shared stories of her childhood, of the quiet moments spent practicing, the frustration and joy of discovery, and the longing she had felt for a connection through music. He shared similar experiences, and she realized that despite different paths, the emotions they felt were universal. They both understood the power of dedication, vulnerability, and expression through art. This shared understanding created a bond, brief but profound, that left her feeling recognized, inspired, and supported. After several minutes, she felt a sense of completion, as if the conversation had given her something she had been missing for years. She thanked him again, her voice warm and sincere, and he offered a final nod and smile before returning to his piano. She stepped back to her seat, feeling a mixture of exhilaration, gratitude, and quiet awe. The restaurant seemed brighter now, not because of the lights but because of the shift within her. She realized that she had been part of something rare, a fleeting yet powerful encounter that would leave a lasting impact. Sitting back down, she allowed herself to reflect on the evening. The music, the conversation, the unexpected resonance of a childhood memory, all of it combined to create a profound sense of awakening. She understood now that moments of inspiration and connection could appear anywhere, even in the simplest of settings, and that they often arrived when she was open, present, and receptive. It was a lesson in mindfulness, in appreciation, and in the enduring power of passion and expression. She noticed the pianist starting a new piece, his fingers moving with the same grace and intent as before. This time she listened without distraction, letting the music flow over her without analyzing or comparing. She felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet contentment, as if the entire experience had prepared her to receive it fully. Each note seemed to reinforce the clarity she had gained from their conversation, emphasizing the beauty of presence and the value of pursuing what she loved. The restaurant continued to hum with life. Yet she felt a sense of harmony between the music, the diners, and herself. She understood that connection did not always require words, and that the impact of a shared experience could be felt deeply without explicit acknowledgement. She reflected on the ways in which small gestures, moments of sincerity, and genuine expression could touch others, sometimes profoundly, sometimes subtly, and that she had been fortunate to witness and participate in such a moment. As the performance continued, she felt her mind begin to plan, not in a frantic way, but with a quiet, determined clarity. She would revisit her love for music, practice again, and allow herself to explore creativity without fear of failure. She realized that the journey was as important as the destination, and that every attempt, every moment of engagement contributed to growth and understanding. The pianist's presence, his skill, and his openness had ignited a spark she intended to nurture. When the piece ended, she stayed for a few more moments, letting the silence settle and the echoes of the music fade. She felt a sense of gratitude that went beyond words, an acknowledgement of the power of art, connection, and shared human experience. She knew that leaving the restaurant would not diminish the impact of the evening. It would remain with her, a guiding memory and a source of inspiration for years to come. Finally, she rose from her seat, feeling a combination of energy, calm, and anticipation for what was ahead. She approached the pianist one last time, offering a sincere nod and smile. He returned it, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond formed in a brief yet significant encounter. She turned and walked toward the door, feeling the cool air of the evening outside, but carrying the warmth of the restaurant, the music, and the conversation within her. As she stepped into the night, she reflected on everything that had happened. She had come hungry for a meal, expecting nothing more than food and perhaps a quiet evening. Instead, she had discovered connection, inspiration, and the rediscovery of a long-neglected passion. The experience had been profound, transformative, and unexpectedly beautiful. She realized that life had a way of offering lessons and gifts in the most ordinary of places, and that she had been attentive enough to receive them. Her heart felt lighter, her mind clearer, and her spirit more alive. She understood that the pianist's music, their conversation, and the shared experience of the evening had created